Hey there, I'm Gary Schuster, your friendly neighborhood inventor, and this is Innovation Cafe. Today we have something really interesting. We have a question from one of the Facebook groups I'm in. I'm going to put that up in the corner. And today's question says, "Hello, I'm new to the patent world and I have several questions." And there are three of them. One, what's the expected price range for an IP patent given the broad scope? Okay, well, let's take them one. Let's take the first one. I'm not quite sure what you mean by an IP patent. IP means intellectual property, and all patents are IP. IP is just the government's way of protecting ideas from being stolen. So the expected cost range of getting a patent can really vary. If it's for complicated stuff, complex machines, stuff that involves computers, anything with computers will be very expensive. Anything with software will be expensive. You should expect on the low end of the range, $10,000 to $15,000. This is for like an improved hammer grip or something, or maybe a design patent. And you can get up to $50,000, $60,000 for really complex patents. And there are office actions. In response to an office action, $5,000 or $10,000. And examiners give office actions. They'll give you a rejection. They'll maybe give you a notice of allowance. That would be awesome. Oftentimes they ask you to make an election between two different types of inventions that you've tried to simultaneously claim. And if you want to file internationally, that gets really expensive. You should expect to spend low six figures, hitting the majority of big economies. If you wanted to capture a little over 50% of the global GDP, you're looking at filing in the US, in China, in the UK, in Germany. Those are the big ones. So now question two. With a working prototype and resolved issues, should I opt for a provisional patent or proceed directly with a non-provisional patent? Okay, well, first of all, let's be clear. Patent application is all that a provisional patent application will ever be. There's no such thing as a provisional patent. There's a provisional application. Similarly, when you file for your non-provisional patent, that's also a patent application. It's called a utility application. And this is for an invention that has function. There are design patents that are treated differently. There are plant patents that are treated differently. But the vast majority of what you're going to deal with are utility patents. So, do you file a provisional? It sort of depends on your cash position and on whether you're ready to roll this thing out to market, if you've already done the market research. If you know this is good, if perhaps you're already selling it, and you're not beyond the 1 year on sale bar or any of the other things that your patent lawyer will tell you are no-nos, then maybe you jump right to the utility patent. So the question is, do you opt for a provisional patent application or a utility patent application? And it's really kind of simple. If you're ready to hit the market, you've done your market research, you know this thing's going to sell, or someone's going to want to license it, or maybe you already have a licensing deal in mind, the utility patent's good because it'll get you out there early, and it'll get your patent issued earlier. Provisional patent applications do one interesting thing, which is they buy you a 1 year priority date, which is to say if I file my provisional patent application on January 1st of this year, I can file the utility application on January 1st of next year. But for safety, you want to file on a December 31st, just saying. But it gives you a year, essentially, that doesn't count towards your patent expiration. The patent expires 20 years from the filing date of the utility patent application. And it doesn't matter how long they take to issue the patent, although they will give you something called a patent term adjustment if they take a long time due to improper patent office delays. So there's that strategic reason. If you think that this is a patent that no one is going to be infringing for another 5 years, well, then go with the provisional, just because it gets you an extra year on the back end. If it's a patent that's likely to be valuable up front but not on the back end, maybe the first 5 years will be valuable, and after that, you can sort of predict that, say, AI will be doing a similar function and you won't need that invention anymore. You want to move immediately to utility application, and you probably want to file something called Track 1, which gets you your first office action in a year. Quick pro tip, if you file multiple patent applications on the same date and you make them all track one, you have better budget because you're going to get office actions in all of them right around the same time, usually maybe the 8 or 9 month mark. And so that's going to be a very expensive month. So, a little planning ahead with that. There's less of a coordination of timing. I don't think it's intentionally coordinated anyhow, but the timing is less coordinated when you don't file track one, because then they can take years and years, and it depends on how busy that art unit is as to when you get your response. So what is the advantage of filing a provisional patent application? Well, you should file a provisional patent application because A, you can start to say it's patent pending legally, because it is. It's patent pending. You have a provisional application on file. B, once you have a provisional application on file, you then can go to potential licensees, potential partners, and you don't have to worry quite as much about them stealing the idea. I mean, granted, you still want a non-disclosure agreement, you still want to be careful, but because you're already pending with your patent application, it doesn't matter if they steal your idea as long as the patent issues and covers the thing that you're trying to sell them. There's a lot of ifs in there. Patents don't always issue. They don't always issue with claims that you want. So yeah, you still want the non-disclosure agreement, but it makes it much safer. Another thing heavily in favor of a provisional patent application is sometimes you have most of the invention done. You might have, say, imagine you're inventing the bicycle. And so you've invented the main parts of the bicycle and it'll go. And then a couple months later, you say, oh, what would be cool? Gears. Gears would be cool. And then a couple months after that, what would be cool? Hand brakes instead of, back pedal brakes. And then a few months after that, you think, hey, I should attach a bell to this. And maybe a couple days before the 1-year anniversary of your provisional application, you think, oh, we need lights to drive at night. Now, if you file a utility application on day one, all those other inventions are going to have to be done either in their own patent application or in a continuation in part, which is a whole other animal that we can talk about another time. But as a provisional, you can file multiple ones during that year. So if you're working on a relatively fast-moving art area, say you're working in AI or you're working in virtual reality or any of these art areas where companies are throwing incredible amounts of money and effort at, you're going to want to get something issued whenever it issues. You're going to get something on file fast, because the entire world, all the big economies, are on a first inventor to file system. So when you file that provisional patent application, you disclose everything you know how to do. Then a couple months later or a month later, you come up with something new, you file that, another as a provisional. A couple months later, you file another one, and then at the 1-year anniversary, you combine all of those provisionals into a single patent application, and that's your utility patent application. It has a lot of advantages. It's much cheaper. Now, another thing to know about a provisional patent application is there are no formal requirements for it. I mean, it can literally be a scan of something you wrote on the back of a cocktail napkin, and that works provided that it fully enables the construction of the invention. There is a requirement for every patent application to become a patent, and for a provisional application to give you a good priority date, that they enable someone having ordinary skill in the art to build the thing. So do you really want to file a provisional application before you know what you're doing? No. You want to make sure it's enabled. And enablement, again, either you actually build it and you describe how you built it, or you provide the blueprints for someone to build it. You don't actually, for example, if you come up with a better way to build a 1,000-passenger aircraft, no one's expecting you to actually build it, but you have to describe it well enough so that the engineers at a big aircraft company could do it. So that's your provisional application. You don't need a lawyer for a provisional patent application, but do Google something called patent profanity. There are certain words that you just don't want to use in a patent application. Only, must be, has to be, anything that's really limiting, you probably want to stay away from, especially because you're in the provisional stage, you haven't talked with a patent lawyer yet, or maybe you have and not hired them, and you want to leave as many options open as you can. So that's how to proceed with a provisional patent application. If you really know what you're doing, file it on your own, but I'd still run it by a lawyer. It's expensive. If your cash flow doesn't allow for it, it doesn't allow for it. And it's better to be on file early than it is to have someone else file before you and you lose the patent entirely. So if you have to, and your cash flow says so, file the provisional patent application. Now here's something interesting. You don't have to use the provisional patent application. So if I file a provisional patent application on January 1st, and I go to a patent lawyer, say I then do product testing and I do some focus groups, and I'm like, yeah, this is great, I get funding, and we go to a good patent lawyer 6 months later, and the patent lawyer looks at the provisional and says, yeah, this is enabled, but it's so limiting, and you say things are prior art that aren't even prior art, and you're all over the map, and you're using patent profanity, and there's all these other problems with it. You could just let it die. It never gets published, and it just sits there. And granted, if you're in litigation later, you'll probably have to produce that draft, but that's a problem for a lot further in the future. So provisional patent applications do provide an incredible amount of flexibility, and they are really cheap. Like as a micro entity, well under $100 to get the thing on file. And most people who haven't filed a patent application are considered micro entities. Now, the third question is, what are the chances of successfully applying for a provisional patent independently versus seeking the expertise of an attorney? Well, I kind of hit that in the answer to the previous question, and so I'm not going to go over that ground again, but I'll tell you, you're not applying for a provisional patent. Remember, it's a patent application. It's not even, yes, it's an application, but it's never matures into an actual patent. It's always a provisional patent application. It can never become a real patent. To do that, you have to file a utility application that says, I claim the priority date of this provisional, and then you describe in your utility application everything you described in the provisional plus whatever else you've come up with in between the two. Now, do you need to use a lawyer? No. Should you use a lawyer? If you can afford it, yes. If you can't afford it, maybe not. When you're thinking about filing a provisional patent application, it's a cost-benefit analysis you're going to do. There's some real benefits to having a patent lawyer. The patent application is much more easily filed quickly. So if you go to a venture capitalist and they say, you only have a provisional application, I need to see the utility on file before we fund you, you're already most of the way there. There are a lot of other advantages. There are strategic advantages. There's advantages that ultimately result probably in a stronger patent if it issues. But there are real costs. Lawyers are not cheap. I know even really bad lawyers aren't cheap, and really good lawyers tend to be quite expensive. Although there's not necessarily a correlation. I've seen some less expensive lawyers that would just much better than the expensive ones. But generally, you're going to spend a pile of money on your provisional patent application if you use a lawyer, and you're going to spend probably, you got the amount in your wallet right now if you've been to the ATM recently on your provisional application if you don't use a lawyer. So probably, use a lawyer unless you think that financially it doesn't make sense, the cost benefit doesn't work. So I want to thank the person whose name I'm going to blur out of courtesy for people's privacy, for asking those questions. It gave me a real opportunity to answer some things that are in the ambit of what most innovators are curious about. So, signing off from Innovation Cafe here in my living room in the heart of beautiful downtown Vancouver. I'm Gary Schuster, your friendly neighborhood inventor, and it has been a pleasure to talk to you today. If you like what you heard, give the video a like. If you really like what you heard and you want to hear more, maybe give me a subscribe. And if you have some questions, throw them in the comments. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.